Hello everyone. Today I, Abhinav Dhar, Aditya Joshi, and Akshay Agarwal and Sukrit Malik will talk about Boltzmann machines. So first we'll start with the base paper and then give a brief introduction to Boltzmann machines and talk about a few basic topics related to Boltzmann machines. And then we will move to restricted Boltzmann machines and then discuss a few core concepts behind restricted Boltzmann machines such as contrastive divergence and Jeffrey Hinton's shortcut. Then we will talk about a few applications of restricted Boltzmann machines, and then we'll conclude by talking about some special cases or types of Boltzmann machines. Now, Aditya will talk about the base paper.
Hello everyone, this is Aditya Joshi. So, the base paper, as you can see on your screens, is titled An Introduction to Restricted Boltzmann Machines. It was written by Fisher and Eigel in 2012. Um, a lot of people would go for papers written by Jeffrey Hinton during the 1980s, and which described restricted Boltzmann machines and Boltzmann machines in general. But we have decided to go with this paper because those papers involved a lot of other things as well besides just the restricted Boltzmann machines. Because there wasn't exactly a single paper that only talked about restricted Boltzmann machines and how they came into being and what their mathematical relationships inside the working of a restricted Boltzmann machine are. So we decided to go with this one, and this paper completely explains from the base as to why restricted Boltzmann machines are called stochastic graphical neural networks. And it also explains some mathematical formulas which are behind the learning algorithm, which is contrastive divergence, which will be discussed by us later on in the upcoming slides. And other than that, there were also other learning algorithms discussed, but we will only restrict ourselves to contrastive divergence because it's the most widely used ones. So now Abhinav is going to talk about the basics of Boltzmann machine before we jump into restricted Boltzmann machines.
Alright, as you can see, the below model is that of a Boltzmann machine. So, unlike other neural networks, which have multiple layers and have an input layer and an output layer consisting of input nodes and output nodes, a Boltzmann machine does not have that kind of structure. A Boltzmann machine is a neural. In a Boltzmann machine, all nodes are connected to one another, and we have only input nodes and hidden nodes. Therefore, a Boltzmann machine is a neural network with no directionality of connection between the nodes, and therefore, as you can see in the figure, there are no arrows. So every node is connected to every other node, and all the connections are going both ways. Um, the hidden nodes here can be represented as H1, H2, H3, and the input nodes, which are also called the visible nodes, are V1, V2, V3, and V4. Now, Sukrit will talk about a few basics about Boltzmann machines.
Hello everyone, this is Sukrit. Now I'm going to start talking about some basics of Boltzmann machine. So Boltzmann machine is a neural network model which follows unsupervised learning, which means that no output data is there which can help the neural network to learn. One way that Boltzmann machine can be used is by helping us to monitor the system so that the states remain stable. It uses the classical Boltzmann energy probability distribution in its working. That's why it's called Boltzmann machine. The distribution is as follows. Next. Now moving on to the restricted Boltzmann machine, or RBM in short. Restricted Boltzmann machine are two-layer neural networks which identify various patterns in the dataset by a method of reconstructing its input. They have two layers, the visible layer and the hidden layer. Visible layer contains input nodes, while the hidden layer is formed by nodes which extract various information from the data, and hence the output at the hidden layer is therefore the weighted sum of input layer. In this image, we can see the interconnection between the visible layer and the hidden layer. Next. Now moving on to the features of RBM. In restricted Boltzmann machine, there is no intralayer communication. What it means is that the nodes of the same layer are not connected with each other and are hence independent from each other. Now this is what makes them different from any other type of Boltzmann machine. The learning algorithm used here is known as contrastive divergence, which is an unsupervised learning algorithm. The most widely used application of RBM is that it is used in recommendation engines. What it does here is that it collects data from various users and uses that to predict what kind of content a certain user should be recommended on a certain platform. Now, Aditya will continue from there.
Hello again, everyone. So now we're talking about contrastive divergence, which is the learning algorithm for Boltzmann machines in general. So it's also the learning algorithm for restricted Boltzmann machines. So so we will basically just talk about how the algorithm works in restricted Boltzmann machines, because its overall working in a Boltzmann machine is far too complex. See, that's the reason why people switch to restricted Boltzmann machines, because they do not have any interconnections between the layers, and that is the fact that allows us to train them more easily. So when we're talking about contrastive divergence in restricted Boltzmann machines, we'll say that it has two major steps. So the first step is Gibbs sampling. So in the picture in front of you, you can see that a certain step is being repeated once, again and again and again, and this is what Gibbs sampling is. Now it consists of two steps. So these two steps are as follows. The first one is the forward pass, which is basically from the input node or the visible node, you make the hidden nodes. You move on to the hidden nodes. The data gets passed on, it gets multiplied by the respective weights and all that, all those things that happen in the neural network, and we finally get the hidden nodes. And after that, reconstruction happens. So hidden nodes, they again try to make up the input node. So that is the reconstruction part. Now, in Gibbs sampling, we keep on doing this sampling again and again and again until we reach a point where you get a particular input layer, you get a set of input nodes. You try to do the forward pass, you get a hidden layer, and then you do a reconstruction and you get an input layer again. So when does this stop? This stops when that input layer that we've gotten now is the same as the previous input layer. So basically uh, the model is just repeating itself. It's just repeating a set of hidden and input layers, and that is what the stable state of the model is. A stable state in terms of energy, stable state in terms of where it converges. So once we've reached the stable state, then we'll look at what happens next. So next slide, please. So yeah, the second step is applying this formula, and it's a localized learning algorithm, which means we'll be tackling each and every weight between two possible nodes, and that is why the term, you can see the term Wij, which means the weight between the weight on the node of connection between visible node I and hidden node J. And this formula basically is a gradient of the log probability of our initial state with respect to the change in a particular localized weight. So where the log probability in this case is just the energy, because Boltzmann machines are energy based models. So and because the entire distribution, as Sukrit earlier mentioned, is just energy distribution based on the Boltzmann probability distribution. So when we calculate the gradient of the initial state with respect to the with respect to the individual weights, uh, it turns out to be what's written on the right hand side, which is the initial state, the input state, which is Vi0 Hj0 minus the final steady state. So what we're trying to do here is we want the initial state to be the stable state, and for that we'll have to change the weights. The weights are what decide that what decide basically the energy curve, and we want our initial state to be at the bottom of that energy curve. So the weight change the curve, and we're just trying to change the curve in such a way that it adjusts itself and the initial state is at the bottom. So this is what the formula is going to help us do. So we can do this thing again and again for different rows of data, and for each row we can update the weights, and that is how the learning process goes. Now, as you can see, the amount of time it took me to explain all of this to you. The drawback of this was that the amount of time it took to go through so many of these Gibbs sampling. So that is why Geoffrey Hinton, he introduced a shortcut, which we'll be talking about now. And so the shortcut, what it basically says is, instead of doing it so many times, we're just going to do it once. And yeah, that is quite surprising, but it works. So how does it work? The basic intuition behind it is that when the model is trying to reconstruct the input, it's living a fantasy. It's doing what it wants, but we don't want it to do what we don't want it to do what it wants. So sorry if that's confusing, but we don't want it to just live in its fantasy. So Geoffrey Hinton said that each and every time the model is trying to generate a fantasy, we will decrease the weights, and each and every time it's trying to work on actual inputs and is trying to do a forward pass, we'll increase the weights. And when that is manifested into a formula, we can see that the change in weight, the change in localized weight, is directly proportional to the data state minus the reconstructed state. And minus the reconstructed state, because the reconstructed state has to result in the weights being decreased, and the data state has to result in the weights being increased. And the proportionality constant is epsilon, and that epsilon is basically the learning rate, which is a hyperparameter which we can change again and again, and that can help in optimization of our model. So here we can see how Geoffrey Hinton's shortcut just made the learning very, very simple. Okay, so now we'll be discussing about some special cases and use cases of Boltzmann machines before we conclude.
All right. Now we'll discuss some real-world examples of restrictive Boltzmann machines. One of these examples is handwritten digit recognition. Uh, this has a wide variety of applications, like in criminal evidence, in office computerization, check verification, and many other things. So how this is done is, a hybrid model is used, which consists of a restrictive Boltzmann machine and a convolutional neural network, which is also called a CNN. And basically, because the handwritten digit recognition comes with a lot of challenges, such as different writing styles and variation in shapes and sizes. So therefore, an RBM is very is highly capable of extracting the important features from this input data, and it is designed in such a way that it can extract the discriminative features from large and complex data sets by introducing hidden units. And therefore, the role of the RBM is to only extract the features and pass it on to the convolutional neural network. The convolutional neural network then acts as a classification based deep learning algorithm, which then classifies the images into their respective numbers. Now we'll talk about some special types of restricted Boltzmann machines. So one of them is called, the first one is called the deep belief network. It is created by stacking several restricted Boltzmann machines one on top of the other. So we can visualize this as the hidden layer of the first restricted Boltzmann machine is basically the uh, input layer of the second Boltzmann machine, and these layers basically represent, these layers one on top of the other then collectively represent a deep belief network. Um, the unlike the general Boltzmann machine, a deep belief network is not multi-directional. It is unidirectional, and the flow of the data moves from top to bottom. The second type of Boltzmann machine that we're going to discuss is a deep Boltzmann machine. This is the overall structure of a deep Boltzmann machine is very similar to that of a a deep belief network. The only difference here is that it allows bidirectional connections in the bottom layers, and its energy function is an extension of the energy functions of the restricted Boltzmann machine. Finally, we hope you learned something from. We'd like to thank you for watching the video, and we hope you learned something uh, from our presentation. Thank you.